Now let's go ahead and start doing some merging from Photoshop into Dreamweaver. Access your Downloads folder, and inside of the Downloads folder, you can go ahead and go to RC Photography, go into the PSD files, and let's open up the Textured Finish file. Now, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and define in the website root your Dreamweaver layout. Now, if you don't know how to do that, just go ahead and follow along with Lesson 9. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to manage my sites. I'm going to create a new site. And let's just say, that's 10. Go to my local root folder. Now we're all set. And this is pretty much all of the stuff we did in Lesson 9. So if that went really fast for you, don't worry. Just go to Lesson 9. It's fine. Now, here we have Dreamweaver layout, and notice that we have no files. We also have the Photoshop layout already set up for us, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut and paste some of this stuff over onto that website. Now, I'm going to go into Dreamweaver, and inside of Dreamweaver, I'm going to open up a file, and inside the Photoshop sliced exports, I'm going to create a new file by just right-clicking a folder and just calling it slice.htm. That separates all of my other stuff from the regular site. Once I have that set, I'm going to double-click here. I'm just going to open up a blank page, and I'll close this. I'll drag this a little bit out so we can see what's going on here. The first thing that I want to grab and drag into this page is going to be the background graphic that I have here. So I'm going to go into my layers, and I'm going to hide everything but that background. So all of that is going to be hidden, and what I'll do here is do a file, save as, and I'm going to save that inside of my RC Photography, website root, Photoshop Slice Exports, and I'm going to call that background. Now, I'll give it an option of about 8, and I'm done. Now, I could have done a save for web as well. That's completely up to you. Once I've done all that, I'm going to start turning everything back on because I'm going to need to see everything that I'm doing there. Let's go ahead and come over here, turn this back on, and we're good. Now, I'll come down to Dreamweaver, and inside of Dreamweaver, if I refresh, you'll notice there's my background image. I can take that image now and set it as the web background for this page. And I'm going to do all of this stuff using CSS. So notice that I have a CSS style section here. I'm going to click on that, and the first thing that I'm going to want to do is modify the body tag for the page. To do that, I'll go ahead and I'll click this new CSS rule here, and I'll create a tag. This is going to let me redefine an HTML element, and right off the bat, I know that I'm going to do the body tag. So I'm going to click OK here, and I know that the background is going to have color of black, and I'm going to have an image. So I'm going to browse into that exports directory, and I'm going to select that image and click choose. I don't want the image to repeat going down, nor do I want it to repeat going across. So for me, on the background repeat, I'm going to select no repeat. And I'm going to click OK. Pretty much done. Now I have the background graphic here. From here, what I want to do is I want to be able to take this and I want to be able to apply this to a new page. Notice that I created here something called style. And what it's doing is it's creating the CSS style in the page. So I don't want to do this in the page. I want to do this on a separate style sheet. So I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to click on the trash. I'm going to highlight style. I'll click on the trash as well. Let's do this again. I'm going to click here, and this time what I'm going to do is rather than doing it in this document only, I'm going to click on the drop down and I'm going to select a new style sheet file. That's the important part. Once we have that set, I'm going to click OK, and it's automatically going to tell me, all right, what do you want to name this style? I'm going to call it photostyles.css. And I'm going to click on save. Now from here, I can go ahead and do the exact same thing that I did before. Background, color of black, background image, there's the background, and the repeat is going to be no repeat. And I click OK. So it looks exactly the same, but here's the difference. Go to the CSS styles and notice now everything's included inside of that photostyles.css. That means that it's linking to that external page. And you'll notice that the relate files are open here in this area. I'm going to click Save to save that, and I'm going to go back to my source code and go to Design View. So that part's already set. Now the next thing that I'm going to want to do here is I want to be able to create a container that's going to hold the website. To do that, I'm going to go to the CSS style section, and I'm going to create a new CSS rule. That CSS rule is going to be an ID. CSS uses IDs to be able to outline specific discrete areas of a page. So almost think of it almost kind of like a giant pill that's going to hold everything together. And then that pill gets divided into smaller sections. What we're going to do is we're going to create an ID called container that's going to be the pill that's going to hold everything. And then inside the container, we're going to make an ID called header. We're going to make another ID called navigation. And then we're going to make another ID called body. And maybe we'll make a fourth one called footer, so that everything is specified in discrete sections. IDs can only be used once per page, so that helps us out even further. The first thing that I want to do is I want to create one called container. Once I do that, I'll go ahead and click OK. And it's going to specify, all right, well, how big do you want this container? My container is going to be the size of this Photoshop document. What I'll do is I'll go to image and image size, and I'm going to use this 955 by 600. Now that 600 is going to change because as the website expands, I want to limit it to 600. So that number is going to stay blank in the ID, but for now, I'll put in a number, and then I'll go ahead and I'll change that. So 955 is the key here. I'll go back into Dreamweaver, and the box that I'm going to create is going to be 955, and the height is going to be, I'm going to leave it for 900 for now, just to have it expand a little bit. And I'm going to float that over to the left and click OK. Now, nothing's happened here. I noticed that I made the mistake of putting in style. I wanted to do that because I wanted to be able to show you one thing. Notice when I click on this rule here, see where it says this document only? If you forget to move it over to the photo styles, which is where I want to write all of that stuff, don't worry about it. You could always just grab this and drag it right to the photostyles.css. Now it includes it in the CSS file and not in the document. I can just highlight the style section and trash it. Now, nothing's changed here on the page. We need to add that CSS container onto the page itself. So to do that, I'm going to go to the CSS style section, and I'm going to click on Insert, Layout Objects, and Div Tag. The div tag that I'm going to put in here is going to be the ID of container. And I'll click OK. By default, it puts in some dummy text here that sometimes is a little hard to read. So what I tell everybody is the best thing for you to do here is just go into the CSS style section, and for the body tag, just redefine it so that it has a color of white for text, even though you're not going to use that because you'll probably create a class for this. Click OK, at least you'll be able to see it. The other thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to snap to the very edge, so under the box section, I'm going to put in a margin of 0 all around. That's going to get rid of this space that we have here on the top and on the left. Watch. Puts it to the very top, puts it to the very left, and we're good to go. If you ever want to see where you are inside of CSS, keep your eye here in this section, because if you highlight a specific area, it'll tell you. In the body, now you're inside of the div with an ID container. I'm going to highlight this text that we have in here, and I'm going to delete it. I'm still inside of the div of container, and that's where I'm going to put in the other areas that I'm going to paste from Photoshop. I'll go back into Photoshop, and Photoshop, I'm going to want to use some guides here to be able to help me with this. So what I'll do is I'll drag out a guide, and I'll put the guide right around here. Looks weird, I know, because you're cutting the ribbon here, and you're cutting part of the shield. But that's part of the magic when you're working with the web page. Not everything is what it seems. The header is going to be this graphic, and buttons are going to look a little odd. But the thing is, even though it's bent, you really are working with a rectangular layout. So if I drag another guide, I would say that my guides would end about here. And each of these sections are very, very discrete sections, right? So I want this kind of go over here. Let's say, actually, you know what? I could even do this, right? Make that one button right here. I'll make this a second button right here. come over here and make this a third button, and I'll make this a fourth button. I'm really just using these guides kind of to help me with placement. This is going to be a remnant. This is going to be a remnant. I'm not going to worry about it, but at least now I can wand or marquee select and see some sizes. First thing I'm going to do is I need to be able to see the size for what this container is going to be. Makes it a lot easier because it snaps. I can come over here in the info panel and I'll see that the height is 955 by 142. So I've got to keep that in mind. 142 by 955. I'll come over to Dreamweaver and I'm going to cut out the step of putting a class here and then going to insert by just doing this. I'm going to go to Insert, Layout Objects, Div Tag. And I'm going to put an ID of header. I'm going to create a new CSS rule for this. And in this case, it's going to have an ID of header, and I'm going to click OK. The box that I'm going to put in here is going to be 955 by 142, the same size of that graphic. And I'm going to float that to left. I'm going to click OK, and click OK here, and notice it puts it right on the page. Now I can go ahead and highlight this and delete it. The last thing that I want to be able to do here is I want to be able to take the graphic that we have here and paste it into Dreamweaver. Watch this. This is pretty cool. Having everything selected here, I'm going to do an edit. I'm going to go to Copy Merged. That'll put everything inside of the clipboard. Now I'll switch over to Dreamweaver, and in Dreamweaver, I'm going to single click on Edit, and I'm going to go to Paste. It automatically recognizes there's something inside of the clipboard and says, hey, you can specify settings for this right here. Almost kind of like image ready. The format for me is fine, but obviously you can go in and change these ping formats or GIF formats, and you can play with quality. This is going to be good for me. And I'm going to click OK. Notice that it's going to try to save that graphic somewhere, and what I want to do is I want to save that in this exports folder. Again, the point for this is I want to keep the content or the buttons, the layout of the site separate from the content that's going to go in it. So I'll highlight this export section, and I'm going to call this header. Notice it puts in header.jpg. I click on Save. Alt text, I'm going to say RC Photography Header. And I'm going to click OK. And there's the information. Not bad. From here, I'll just go ahead and do a file save. So we've been able to take a background graphic, find a site, place it into a page, and use some CSS to be able to build a general container, a header container within that, or a header ID within the container, and paste a graphic from Photoshop into Dreamweaver. In the next lesson, what we'll do is we'll talk about pasting all of the other graphics here and how to be able to use CSS to manipulate that layout so that we can have a good navigation and a good center content section.